episode might trigger a lot of you who have gone through cancer within your families or maybe yourselves. But what I am here to tell you are 3 lessons that I've learned from Dr. Ranj, not necessarily about cancer, but the lessons that he taught me in the podcast around health and how we can apply those lessons to our life. Because there were lots of lessons in this podcast that I thought, hey, listen, I know you're talking about health here, and I know you're talking about cancer here, but this can actually be applied to everything else. So before we get into this episode, I just have a tiny little favor to ask all of you. I know it feels like I'm asking you every single week, but that's because 50% of you or more have not subscribed when you're watching these podcasts, and you have no idea how much it helps in me getting more incredible guests on the podcast so that I can share more information with you all. So this week I had Dr. Ranj on the podcast, and like I said, I want to share my top 3 favorite lessons. The first lesson that I really want to share is how awareness and early detection can actually change your outcomes. Now in the podcast, Dr. Ranj was talking about how being proactive and checking for cancer can really help you when it comes to your diagnosis and for your treatment. He was talking about the fact that the earlier we get checked, the more likely it is that we'll be healthy and we'll survive whatever cancer it is. He also mentioned that every cancer is totally different, and so the symptoms for breast cancer, the symptoms from brain cancer, the symptoms from skin cancer are all very different, and he lists all of them here. And it's important to remember that cancer isn't only one thing. But one of the lessons that I found really powerful about this around early detection is it can be applied to any area of our life, not just our health, but our relationships, our career. What are some of the signs and symptoms we're seeing when it comes to our relationships? What are some of the signs and symptoms we're seeing when it comes to our career that actually can lead to their downfall? A really interesting one in here on relationships is talking about how much time you actually spend with your partner and how much quality time you actually spend with your partner. One of the things that Nicola and I love to do, you probably heard me talk about this on my Instagram, is how much we love to stay at home. And I found that a few weeks ago, all we were doing is working in the week, and then on Friday we were so tired, we'll fall asleep to a movie. Saturday we go to the gym, we do a bit of work, and in the evening, again, we're just falling asleep. And so I realized that if we keep doing this, 1, we're not connecting, 2, we're not discussing anything bar from work, 3, we're not really spending any time together and doing any fun stuff. And so ultimately, that's not really going to lead to a happy marriage. We're not married yet, but this isn't a good start. So we made it a very important thing to actually carve out time in our week, and maybe on a Friday, if we're too tired, to actually spend Saturday together and actually not do our work 24/7. It can feel really challenging when there's so much to do and you want to do all of this stuff, but our relationship is really important as well, and we need to make sure we're carving time for each other so that we don't just do that for years and then say why aren't we connected anymore? Why aren't we talking anymore? Why don't we know what we love about each other anymore? So this point was really important for me, not only when it comes to cancer, where I think it's the most important, and he was talking about it, but also when you apply it to your life and your relationships too. If something doesn't feel right, physically, emotionally, or mentally, I know it can feel really overwhelming, but take that first step to address it. Be proactive. What does it mean? Why is this happening? What's changed? Why is this happening so often? Whatever those things are, really identify them first. When you identify those things, now how can you solve it? What are the steps that you can take? And like I said, this doesn't just apply to your health, it can apply to your career or your relationships too. We often think that things will resolve themselves. It's the same with procrastination, right? If I just ignore it for a while, it will just happen. I'll just do it later. But procrastinating only leads you to get further from the thing that you need to get done. It only pushes you further away from that goal. And even though it can feel scary when it comes to things like cancer and going to the doctor to go and get checked, it's so important to take action when you first find something that you're not quite sure of. The second lesson I learned from Dr. Ranj was how we can overcome cultural stigmas by having difficult conversations. Especially in the South Asian culture, I know when people have gone through cancer, they've said to their families, I don't want to tell anyone, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want people to know. And so often what that does is isolate them from other people. We don't want to share our experiences even with our closest family, friends, and members. And I actually referenced this in my podcast when I had Karina on the podcast, and she said that her grandma had actually suffered through breast cancer. Now, a really important example here is how Karina shared that her grandma had gone through breast cancer, and she wished that she had talked about it so that she was aware of the signs and symptoms much earlier. So often we think not talking about it means that we're protecting other people, but us talking about it can actually help save someone's life. So if you've gone through something and you share that with another person, that will maybe highlight an experience or a symptom that they've gone through and they've just not been addressing. And so often, I know it can feel really challenging to tell people you're going through such a difficult time, but you can actually help people with your experience. Now, let me just be clear. I know that these are really, really tough conversations. And if you're South Asian like me, you haven't been taught to have conversations like this. If I'm honest, I don't even think this is a South Asian thing. I think so many of us have been told to avoid difficult and hard conversations. When we see someone, we don't want to ask them about something. When we talk about something, you don't want to put them in, we don't want to be a burden. But tough conversations are what gets us, number one, closer to the other person. Number two, it allows us to have a much deeper and meaningful relationship. And number three, it can actually help open our eyes to things that we've been closing them to. One thing that I would like to say is how important it is that we encourage and normalize having these difficult conversations within our inner circles. It's about having empathy and being compassionate, even if it's something that you feel uncomfortable with or something you feel awkward about. If none of us ever talked about our health, if none of us ever talked about the difficulties we have in our relationships, if none of us ever talked about any hardships we had in our career, how would we understand that it's normal and that other people are also going through it? Every single time I've spoken to someone who suffered from cancer, they felt like, why me? Why only me? But that's not the case. Dr. Ranj actually explained the shocking statistics of cancer, and it probably affects more people than you know. But the thing is, we don't talk about it, so we think that it only affects us. And by talking about it, we can understand that it affects so many people, and there are so many different things that people are trying and doing that could really actually help us too. The third point I want to talk about is how education and knowledge actually empower action. Understanding the complexities behind any situation, and in this case cancer, really helps us to actually make informed key decisions. And this can actually make us feel empowered rather than fearful or overwhelmed. So often we just think, oh, this is such a small thing. I won't actually see the doctor about it. It's not really a big deal. And then we actually think about it constantly. Oh, I saw this lump on my breast. Is it getting bigger? Is it actually a lump? And you're constantly thinking about it. You've told yourself it's not a big deal and that's why you're not going to go to the doctor. But actually, it's taking up a lot more mental space. Now, in these kind of situations, it's always better to go and get something checked. And this is what Dr. Ranj was saying. I know a lot of people in the comments, by the way, have said that they haven't been able to get an appointment. It's really difficult with the doctors. A lot of people dismiss you, and I totally get that. Karina actually shared a very similar story when she was telling me about her experience with breast cancer. But what she said is that this is my body, and I know that it's not normal. And you just got to be so confident in saying that. And this is where I'm saying I know it's really, really challenging. A lot of us don't want to feel like we're a burden. A lot of us don't want to feel like we're actually going to the doctor and telling them how to do their job. But you know your body and you know what's changed. And therefore, telling yourself, oh, it's not a big deal and I won't think about it is actually not true, because you will think about it, and that will probably give you way more anxiety and make you feel so nervous about something rather than just going to get it checked. One thing I would say here is just try and be curious. I know it's easier to just say, leave it alone, it's not a big deal, but really try and be curious about something that's changed in your body. Show a friend who's a doctor. Maybe don't go online and read all about it, but do try and research it if you can. There's so much knowledge and so many incredible podcasts out there. And actually in the podcast with Dr. Ranj, we do go through the different signs and symptoms. So I really would recommend actually just watching that episode. It's really not that long. It's actually quite a short episode, and we actually purposely made it that way because we wanted everyone to have the information that they need without taking too much of your time. So my 2 journal prompts for you. Think about a time where you ignored or delayed doing something and it actually made things worse. What signs did you miss or overlook? And what lessons has this kind of taught you? It's so normal, by the way, to ignore things. I do it all the time. I do it with this podcast half the time. I'm like, that's so overwhelming, I don't want to do it. And it always leads to more stress and always makes me feel way more anxious about doing it because I have to do it. I have to face the issue. We think if we don't face an issue, it will go away, but it's just not true. So that's my first journal prompt. My second journal prompt is reflect on a topic that you currently feel a little bit hesitant or embarrassed to talk about. I know from someone who has had a lot of people in their close circle experience cancer, how difficult it can be to have those conversations. I actually had a really good conversation with someone about it recently where I said, I know you went through that experience and you didn't want to tell anyone. Why was it? Can I just get your perspective on it? And we openly talked about it. And then when I gave them the other side of how important it is to share, they were actually a lot more receptive. That was a really, really hard conversation to have because I'm not in that position, and therefore I don't know how I'd feel if I actually went through cancer, if I'd want to talk to people about it. But actually opening it up and having a really open discussion about it really helped me to understand their perspective. And they also said that they might start talking about it a little bit more because they know that it can help a lot more people. So these are my top 3 lessons that I learned from my podcast with Dr. Ranj. I know that this is a really difficult topic and I know it's really, really hard, but I really urge you all to watch the full episode because I think it can be very, very helpful. Next week, I have a very different podcast. podcast. It is incredibly juicy. It is one that I'm